I am going to be honest and say that I am literally half asleep. I could knock out, but I have a lot of things to do, and one of them is to record this podcast and get it out by today. Hopefully, that's the plan. I just came back from a really fun camping trip, which I'll talk about in next week's High Low Buffalo. But just to go over last week's High Low Buffalo, or previous weeks, because there's sometimes too many highs or too many lows, buffaloes or whatever. And because of that, I usually cheat and I push over 1 week's high for the next week, if that makes any sense. So you're going to be hearing about, I think, a high from 2 weeks ago, but it's okay because it's still a high and it's still relevant and I still want to talk about it. So for my high, I went to Coney Island, and on the 4th of July, there's a lot of really fun things, but I think what I just loved doing the most that day was eating funnel cake, because I haven't had it in so long, and it's just such a nostalgic and like comfort food in a way. It's like just so freaking good and makes me so happy, and it makes me feel like a kid. And I also rode a roller coaster, and it's been a really long time since I rode one. So I was super duper excited to go on it. Unfortunately, it was $10 per ride, so I only went on one ride. But this one was super awesome, and I just love the feeling of like going down a drop and like not being able to scream, or like your stomach flipping. It's just such a good feeling. And for my low, I went rock climbing that same weekend, which was so freaking fun. But it also meant that I was super freaking sore the next day. And I swore to God, everything I did climbing wise was way harder than it was the first time. I think I am not as fit as I used to be, and that's okay. But Monday and Tuesday paid for it. I had so much trouble working out at the gym. To do arm day was literally terrible. I couldn't even use the machines because I was already sore, and just even lifting my arms and just working on my computer was a lot. And that says a lot, because I don't move my arm like greater than like a 10-degree distance from my body. So yeah, that wasn't that fun. And for my buffalo, I went to a candle making class, and that was also super fun. It was a free candle making class with the MoMA Museum, and if you have a membership, you can get invited to these free art classes. And this candle making class, I just got really lucky because it didn't sell out before I signed up, and I met a bunch of strangers there, and most of them were a lot older, like more like 30s, 40s, the types of people that were there were like the types of people who can afford a pretty expensive museum membership, right? So that's just like the vibe of the group, if that helps set the context. And it was really interesting talking to them, because they started talking about work, and they were bringing up things that I say and feel on a daily basis. You guys already know how I feel about it, because I never stop talking about how much I don't like it. And it's to the point where I think it's a little bit of my personality now. But anyways, they were talking about how, you're just cogging the machine. And even this one lady who was the CFO of this really big agency company, she was saying how she thought once she finally gets up to that position, she would be able to actually make a difference, but then she was still not high enough to actually do something. And she just realized, like, it's kind of a lost cause, and it's actually pretty terrible. And a lot of people are just talking about how they go on a day-to-day basis doing, their 8 hours. And at the end of the day, they still feel like they did absolutely nothing and they just wasted their time. And I was just sitting there like, geez, like, I feel and I completely understand how everyone's feeling. And I just made it to my 1 year of working. And these people have been working for 10 to maybe like 30, 40 years of their lives. And they're saying the exact same shit that I say. And I just don't understand. I just felt so weird in the moment because I was like, oh, maybe like a majority of people don't understand this, or like maybe they just don't feel the same way, or maybe they don't feel it strongly enough to kind of get out of it. But this random group of people completely understood where I was coming from, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that's so weird. Like I don't know what to think of it yet. It's just a weird experience that I had. Anyways, when I was growing up, I compared myself to a lot of people. And I can say now that I'm in a much better place and I feel much more confident and happy being who I am and accepting who I am, even though I am flawed and I might not be the coolest human being, the prettiest human being, whatever it is. And I just learned to get used to it and accept it. And now I don't compare myself as much. And I'm not going to say I don't compare myself at all, because that would be a huge ass lie. I still have my days where I wake up and I'm like, just thinking about how I'm missing out on certain traits, on certain looks, whatever it is. But I'm in a much better place, and it's been a long journey, obviously, so I just wanted to talk about what I've learned from that experience, and also, being on both sides of, I used to compare myself to everyone and their mothers, and now I'm in a place where I feel pretty happy with who I am, even though I know there are better looking people, smarter people, whatever it is out there. So in the beginning, just to give a little bit of context, in the beginning, as in especially like middle school, high school times, anytime I would find a good trait or like a cool thing about somebody, like, oh, this person has really pretty eyes, or this person has really pretty body, this person's super good at math, or this person is just like, everyone likes them and they just are somehow effortlessly cool. Whenever I would like find a good thing about someone and like notice it and compliment them about it, or think to myself in my head like, wow, that person's like really cool in this way, or blah blah blah, I would immediately turn around and like look down on myself for not having that trait. Like I couldn't compliment somebody or think good of somebody without punishing myself. And that just made, a good innocent thing of complimenting somebody into something that was pretty toxic for myself. And it got to the point where I was really stingy with my compliments because I just didn't want to voice out the good things about other people. Even though I was just acknowledging them inside, I was afraid of how I would feel for myself. And just going through that for so many years and just doing it excessively in so many different ways, I realized like, if you compare yourself to other people, it is honestly the best way to self-sabotage yourself. And at the same time, while you're self-sabotaging, you are literally doing this in a globe, in a box, and no one else knows, cares, or even benefits from you doing this. Like, it's so interesting that you can dig such a deep hole by comparing yourself to other people, and that person doesn't even realize that by existing, they're causing you this like internal pain. It's so weird. Like, you could just have somebody walking out in the middle of the street and they're looking like badass in the cutest outfit and they just look like a model, and they could be going about their day and the only thing that they're thinking about is maybe walking to work or the plans that they have after, and they really could care less about anything else. But you're sitting here watching this person walk by and you're just beating yourself down for not looking a certain way, and telling yourself like, oh, okay, I need to work out more, like her body looks like a certain way. Like, this thing happens and you're spiraling, self-sabotaging yourself, and that girl honestly cares less, doesn't even know this is all happening, and you end up doing it to yourself. And it's just crazy. It's just insane to do this to yourself, and it's so painful, but it's really hard to get a grip of, and it just is a huge example of a really cheesy quote that comparison is the thief of joy. And I know it's super cheesy, but there's a reason why everyone says it and why everyone knows it and preaches it and whatever. It's because it's true. And it's because so many people experience it and know it inside out. And what I've noticed is when you're comparing yourself to other people, it really makes you do a lot of things that you wouldn't normally do. And one example is, like, if I'm feeling really insecure about how I look, I tend to start shopping. And I feel like my closet is deprived of something to compensate for the fact that I don't feel great in how I look. So I'm like, oh, maybe if I get a new pair of jeans, I will just look better and I'll feel more confident. But it really doesn't work that way. Or some people start working at a certain type of job because they want to look better than the people that they graduated with. Or maybe it's even their families that are putting pressure on them to be like, why aren't you like your cousin, and your cousin's ex is successful doing XYZ, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I'm gonna get a job so that I'm even more impressive than my cousin, for example. Another example of things that people tend to do is they will follow celebrities and just get obsessed with their lifestyle. Like, people who watch Kardashians, there's nothing wrong with it, and I totally get why it's super interesting. But there's also a component of it where it's people following these celebrities and seeing how they live because they're envious and they're chasing this lifestyle that 90% of the time they won't really get. And a lot of the times, like, this it's just like the idea of it, just talking about it is very like easier said than done, where I'm just stating the facts right now of what it's like to compare yourself with other people, and I'm basically trying to tell you guys it's painful and stop doing it. And obviously you guys pretty much know that, but it's easier said than done. And this whole idea and this whole topic came up from like a bunch of things, but one of the things was one of my friends brought up this question and asked me, what would I do if I randomly woke up one day and nobody was alive? There was no one in the world alive except for me. What would I do? And I was like talking to Tiff about it as well. And she was saying like, there really is no point. Like, I'd just be super sad and I just like die and just kill myself or something, right? Because there's nobody here and there's really no point. There's no point in doing anything. And I was just thinking to myself, like, I probably would go get sushi and enjoy fish and like go like dig through people's kitchens and like go to restaurants where they're serving food and they're like mid prepping food and eat the good food until like I couldn't eat anymore. I would, I don't know, try to teach myself to fly a plane, figure out like all these things, go to hikes and stuff and enjoy the scenery, for myself because there's literally nobody there to, take up the space. I really hate it when I go to like hikes or like museums and stuff and they're just way too many fucking people. So annoying. And I'd go to museums and enjoy the art without people bothering me. So like things like that. And I started saying these things, but then I never mentioned like, I don't know, wearing certain types of clothes or going to style my hair a certain way or, doing work for a certain job or like trying to change the world or anything like that, because it really doesn't matter when people aren't there. And it just made me realize that because there's these certain factors, these external factors, and the world is like designed and made up and built up the way it is, it creates this like system that makes comparison such a huge part of your life, and it makes you think that that's just a normal human nature thing to do, but really it's not. If nobody was here for it, then you wouldn't really do it, and it's not very natural, and it just is there because the world that we're in right now just happens to make it really enticing to compare yourself to other people, and it makes it such a natural thing. And I don't know, I just thought that was super interesting, and it was just like one of the things that came up that made me think about comparing myself to other people and why I do certain things, like dress a certain way or like try so hard for certain things. And then also another thing that came up is I just on this trip and just like recently, I've been really thankful and lucky that relationship-wise, I found and have a solid group of friends in California and also here in New York. I'm so grateful for the people that I surround myself with, and I can call myself lucky because it can be pretty hard to find your group of people, and I'll go into this in a second. But I realized that I've surrounded myself with people that are pretty confident in who they are and don't mind being themselves around us and around me. And because they're like that and very accepting of other people, I'm not afraid of being who I am and like showing sides of me that I normally hid when I was younger, which was pretty terrible. It was pretty bad. When I grew up, I used to like really hide parts of myself, and like whenever I would be tempted to say certain things or when I liked certain things that I knew that other people didn't like as much, I would never talk about it, where I would lie and be like, yeah, no, I don't like that. What the heck? That's so weird. Like, oh God. And it's just terrible because it obviously made me feel like parts of me weren't enough, and that being myself wasn't enough, and that I wasn't cool enough and I couldn't be accepted. But nowadays I have a group of people who make me feel the complete opposite, where like when I am weird or when I say certain things, it's like a nice added piece to the group. It's like a part of the group that makes it, I don't know, it just adds to the group in a way. And that's how I feel about everyone's traits in this group. And it's so nice that everyone can just be themselves, and it just adds to the experience, and it makes everyone feel happier. And I like never think of myself to like compare myself to everyone else. I just like am happy that I'm who I am. And like, if this makes any sense, like I fit this puzzle in a certain way, and I'm gonna get very metaphorical and create this weird analogy, but just bear with me. Thinking of like my groups and my friendships as like this giant puzzle, and obviously I am my own piece in this puzzle that's very unique, and I'm very necessary to make this puzzle complete, or else you're just gonna have one missing piece. And even though it is a very different piece than all the other pieces, it is still part of the group and it belongs, if that makes any sense. And when I look at it that way, I all of a sudden don't think it's necessary to compare yourself to anybody else, because you being yourself is necessary and is as it should be. Hopefully that makes some sense. This gets a little bit complicated because it's a pretty complex topic. But yeah, anyways, I've been super grateful. And if you're in a situation where you can't relate, first, it's not funny. I don't know why I just giggled and laughed. I'm not laughing at you. The first thing I want to say is I'm really sorry, but you should really think about the types of friends you have and whether or not you want to keep them, because there's so many people in this world that wasting your time with people who don't make you feel good and don't accept you for who you are is such a stupid thing to do. Sorry, but I just had to say it. You should leave and find a better group of friends. And if any time in the past 15 seconds that I've brought this topic up where you thought of a certain person or a certain group flashed in your head for even a minute second, you know deep down that person or that group is probably not the best for you. So maybe hanging out with them less so that you can feel better about yourself is a little bit better. And just instead enjoying your own company might be a little bit of a better option. But anyways, to add on all of this, why the heck do we do this in the first place? And I was thinking about this, and I think it's because of 3 different things. And the first is how we understand and interpret the world. So I think we have to compare like objects, experiences in the world to be able to understand them, to be able to differentiate between, let's say, a dog from a cat. You have to compare the dog to the cat so that you know that a dog and a cat are not the same. And taking that kind of tactic of understanding the world, we apply it to ourselves, and that's when it becomes toxic. So at the end of the day, comparison isn't all that bad. It's just bad when you are starting to do it for yourself with other people. It also does get bad when you're kind of stupidly comparing yourself, as in unrealistically. And an example of this is to compare yourself to somebody you don't even start off from the same foot from. So if I compare myself to, let's say, Donald Trump, and I'm like, why am I not as rich as him when he started off with a family of generational wealth, and that wealth got passed down to him. So he got his start at making money and starting a business very young because of that background. So he started at like a level 50, and I had to start at a level 1. And how can I compare myself to somebody who started at level 50 when I could be making insane amounts of growth from level 1 to level 15? Like I jumped from 1 to 15, but he can make a jump from 50 to 51, and I still feel like I'm not good enough, money-wise, richness-wise, when I've made the biggest growth because I started off at a different point than him. So it's stupid for me to compare myself to him. So, and that's an example of what I mean when comparison can get toxic and stupid. Anyways, another reason why that we compare ourselves is because we want what we can't have. And sometimes we will, and okay, I guess the third one does tie into this, so I'll say both together. So we want what we can't have, and also we as humans really like community, being social. It's just a huge part of who we are as animals. And when we see somebody get something that we don't have, and a lot of this leads to better social status, better communities, closer ties. So somebody who has more money might have more friends or can enjoy more happiness. Whatever it is, like, those two are tied together, and we instantly see somebody else get something that we don't have and are jealous and envious of them. And because we see them as, oh yeah, you and I are both human, so it makes sense that we compare ourselves. And I think that's really where all this comparison comes from. I don't know if this helps with, trying to get over it, but sometimes for me it does. When I reason through really strong emotions and illogical, thoughts and actions or temptations, if I reason through it and I'm like, why the hell is this happening? Why do I feel this way? This is sucky. Why am I doing this to myself? When I think about why and the root cause of it, and then address the root cause instead of just thinking of it surface level, it usually helps. And so, I don't know, maybe something here will resonate with you, and when you're feeling really tempted or feeling really insecure or jealous or whatever it is, you can think back to the root cause and why, and be like, okay, no, I don't actually want to buy all these dresses. I actually feel really insecure about how I look. And then maybe it will help you prevent yourself from losing a lot of money and paying for dresses that really won't solve the problem, because maybe a month from now you'll have the same feeling again and have to buy even more clothing. Okay. So yeah, that is a huge part of it. And making better friends and finding a good group of friends to support me and to hang around with really helped with getting over comparing myself to too many people. And I think another part of how I got over this was just getting really tired and just getting older. There's just so many things, so many more important things to worry about. And because I have to worry about so many other things like money and just passions and things like that, I didn't have time, and I'm just really freaking tired of keeping up with all these thoughts. So that's another part of it. And maybe if you're still having a lot of comparison type of thoughts, maybe busying yourself or just trusting that as you get older, it will kind of just go away. And that's why I think a lot of older people do a lot of, or say a lot of very out-of-pocket crap, or are very just, they could care less about what you think of them, because they've gone through just so much, and they're just like, dude, it's really not that deep, and I am about to die soon, so yeah, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. And also, two more things that really helped was thinking to myself, okay, so if I compare myself to this person and I'm trying to be, I don't know, let's say the number one at my job, and I'm looking at the person who is number one at my job today, and I'm like, wow, I need to be there. Why am I not there yet? But then thinking about what happens once I get there. What happens once I make number one? And then what happens next? And then sometimes I realize, what's the point? Once I get there, I don't know if I'd be much happier or if it'd be any better. And I realize there's actually a lot of flaws to being in that position, and that the grass is not always greener on the other side. So putting myself in the shoes of somebody that I want to be in, it helps a lot with making me realize that I actually don't care about it that much, and that it's actually not that great. And finally, something that also helped is just, I have this belief that I think a lot of the world is determined already, like a lot of our paths are already written down, and so we're just kind of going through the path as it should play out, and we don't really have a say in how that happens. And with that belief, I just end up letting go and just trusting the world to do what it needs to do for me and put me in a place that I need to be. So then it just turns into comparison is just stupid and useless, because I'm going to end up where I need to be at the end of the day, because there is a place literally waiting for me and only me. And that goes to say for everybody else, there's a place for you and literally only you that has experienced what you've experienced, and that, you know, it's just for you. And it's like very similar to what I just mentioned about the puzzle, where, you know, when you're building the puzzle, you really cannot tell what's going on. And so this is just kind of how it is with how your life is playing out and how you feel on a day-to-day basis of like, why am I not at this point, or why am I not, you know, like this person? And it's because you belong in a certain part of that puzzle, and that's the only way that everything will make sense. And so stop trying to change yourself, because it's kind of stupid and you're not going to get very far, and it's just hurting you at the end of the day. So yeah, that is my 2 cents on comparison. And that comparison is just such a bitch. Don't let it get to you. Easier said than done. But yeah, hopefully this episode helped, and hopefully this made some sense, and have a good rest of your week. Bye.